All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going to tackle one of the biggest questions in economics, one that really gets to the heart of how our world is put together. We're going on a little investigation to uncover the real secret of profit.
I mean, think about it for a second. The story we're usually told is that in the marketplace, everything is a fair trade, an equal exchange. You buy a coffee, you pay its value. A company buys steel, it pays its value. So if everything's being swapped for its fair price, where does all this immense wealth we see in the world actually come from? How is new value, and by extension profit, even possible?
And the scale of wealth we're talking about? It's just staggering. This number right here, $26.3 trillion, that's the combined pile of assets managed by just three firms, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. That isn't just cash sitting in a vault. It's a claim on all the future wealth our society is going to produce. To understand a number like that, we have to find its source.
So here's how we're going to crack this case. We're going to follow a clear path. First, we'll set the scene. Then we'll identify a very unique commodity. After that, we'll analyze the working day, put a name to the true source of profit, and finally, see how this one single secret explains the entire structure of the world around us.
Okay, so our investigation starts not where you might think. We have to leave the noisy marketplace, the world of buying and selling. To find the source of new value, we have to go to what Karl Marx called the hidden abode of production. We need to step inside the factory, the warehouse, the call center, the places where work actually gets done.
Now, once we're inside, we can see the capitalists buying up all sorts of things. Raw materials, machines, electricity. But among all those things, there's one commodity that is totally, fundamentally different from all the others. And it's the key piece of evidence in this entire mystery.
And that unique commodity is called labor power. Now, this is an absolutely crucial distinction. When you go to work, you aren't selling your boss a finished product. What you're actually selling is your ability to work for a set amount of time. You're selling your energy, your skills, your brain power, your capacity to perform labor. You sell your labor power. And here's why that's a complete game changer. Take a normal commodity, like cotton. Its value is simply passed along into the final product. The value of the cotton becomes a part of the value of the shirt. It's just a transfer. But labor power, well, it's magical. When a worker is put to work, they don't just transfer their own value, they create brand new value that didn't exist before.
So, if labor power is this incredible source of new value, the next logical question is, how much value? And to answer that, we have to look really closely at the working day itself. This is where the secret really begins to come into focus. This breaks it down perfectly. Let's imagine an 8-hour workday. For the first part of that day, say the first 4 hours, the worker creates enough value to cover their own wages. This is called necessary labor. But here's the kicker. They've been hired for the full 8 hours. So what happens in that second half of the day? Well, the value they produce in those next 4 hours is surplus labor. It's work they do, but for which they receive no payment.
And this value, the value that's created during that unpaid part of the day, has a scientific name. And it is the solution to our entire mystery.
It's called surplus value. This is it. This is the secret sauce of all profit. It's the difference between the total value a worker produces in a day and the value they're paid in wages. Put simply, it's the monetary value of their unpaid work.
So let's be really clear about this. You can have the most advanced robots, the most expensive materials, the most brilliant AI, but none of those things can create new value. They can only transfer the value they already have into a new product. Only the application of living, breathing human labor power can generate surplus value.
This is why something like cryptocurrency mining doesn't create new value in the economic sense we're talking about. Sure, it uses massive amounts of electricity and powerful computers. That's what's called constant capital. But as the quote says, there's no variable capital, which is just the technical term for the money spent on hiring labor power. Without living labor, there's no way to generate new surplus value.
So, what happens when you build an entire economic system on top of this principle of extracting surplus value? Well, it explains the fundamental structure of the world we live in. It creates a society of two completely opposite poles. All that surplus value, extracted from billions of workers all around the world, it has to go somewhere. It doesn't just vanish. It accumulates, it concentrates, and it becomes these colossal fortunes. It's how financial giants like the Big Three can end up as the biggest shareholders in basically every major corporation on Earth, giving them this insane level of control over the whole global economy.
And this mountain of accumulated capital often isn't used to build new things or create new jobs. Instead, it gets funneled into what you could call parasitic activities, like share buybacks. That's when a company uses its profits to buy its own stock, which just artificially juices the share price and creates these huge paydays for the owners. As this quote puts it, it's basically a form of class war fought with financial instruments.
And states themselves can be organized to make this extraction even more efficient. A really brutal historical example is the Bantustan system during apartheid in South Africa. By forcing workers' families onto barren land where they had to grow their own food, the system pushed down the cost of labor power. This meant companies could pay workers just enough for their own individual survival, which massively increased the part of the workday that was unpaid surplus labor and, well, you guessed it, massively increased profits.
So it's really essential to get this. All the different kinds of revenue for the ownership class come from this one single source. The profit for the factory owner, the interest for the banker, the rent for the landlord, they aren't created differently. They're all just different slices of the exact same pie, the total surplus value created by the working class. And this dynamic is what creates the two great opposing poles of our society. On one side, you have the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class. They own the factories, the land, the tech, and they get to appropriate all the surplus value. And on the other side, you have the proletariat, the working class, who own nothing but their own ability to work, and who produce all of the new value. This fundamental conflict of interest, that's the scientific basis for what we call the class struggle.
So, we end up with this question. If the incredible, mind-boggling fortunes we see at one end of society are scientifically rooted in the unpaid labor that's extracted at the other end, what does that tell us? What does it reveal about a world that has trillions and trillions of dollars of wealth existing right alongside extreme poverty? The theory of surplus value doesn't just explain profit. It asks a really deep question about the nature of the whole system itself.